What's up, YouTube, and welcome to Travel Adventures with Eric B. I'm Eric B, and today we're going to talk about 12 travel mistakes that I made, and hopefully you won't make the same mistakes again. So let's go ahead and get the adventure started. Let's go. I'm Eric B from Travel Adventures with Eric B. If you're new here, I offer travel advice. I'm a solo traveler and I do vlogs to help you travel better and more efficiently. First travel mistake that I've made that you should avoid is make sure you know which airport you're going to. Okay, so I made this mistake twice, almost made it a third time. I was in New York. I had a flight that I thought was going out of Newark because I flew into Newark, and I showed up in Newark looking for my gate, and they were like, that gate's not at this airport. It was actually supposed to go out of JFK. So I made the same mistake before. Also in Dallas, I showed up at DFW thinking it was DFW when it was actually Love Fields. So I made that mistake twice there, and I almost made it in Chicago until I realized the day before when I was sitting at the Cubs game and I looked back at my ticket that I was flying out of Midway and not O'Hare. I flew into O'Hare and I flew out of Midway. So like 6 airports in London, and then there's a couple in Paris, Orly, and Charles de Gaulle. So make sure you're going out of the right airport. Make sure you don't show up at the wrong airport. The next one is very important. We're talking about times arrived at the airport. You know, you might have a flight coming in at 5, 6 in the morning. You need to make sure you can get to public transportation, or you have a way to get to your transportation at the right time, check in. This becomes a real issue with late night flights and early morning flights. A lot of times if you got a flight early in the morning, and I made this mistake one time because the public transportation in London wasn't running, it was going all the way to Gatwick, and I had to pay $160 for an Uber ride to Gatwick. So, you know, make sure you're looking at these type of things with the airports. You know, you get sent out to airport further out, it's early in the morning, you can't check into your accommodation until a certain time, it's late at night, you know, you can't check into your Airbnb, your accommodation till a certain time, public transportation isn't running at that time, so you thought you would get there and be able to get the cheap public transportation, and now you got to take an expensive cab or expensive Uber ride. Make sure that your times are synced, that you know what time you get there and when you're able to get your public transportation from there, or your ride or rental car, whatever the case may be. Just make sure that that time is efficient for you to get to where you need to get to when you're booking your flight. Keep that in mind when you book it. The time is very important. It is very possible that you will spend more money trying to get to your destination than you would have if you'd have just got it at a better time. Mistake I've made in the past that I don't make anymore is to make sure you're joining all of the rewards programs. Now, I'll say this, I've gotten the credit card rewards, I've, just stayed and gotten rewards at different places, but I always sign up for the loyalty programs because I've stayed in 5-star hotels, which I've not been able to afford to stay in, but I've done it all for rewards. I've flown business/first class only because of rewards, because I couldn't afford to pay cash for it. So it's very important that you sign up for the loyalty programs. And the World of Hyatt, I don't even have the credit card, and I've gotten quite a few free stays from them. And Hilton, I've gotten a ton of free stays. I do have actually 2 Hilton credit cards. The American Express credit card got me first class travel. So make sure you sign up for all the reward programs. Get the credit cards whenever you can. And if you don't want to get the credit cards, just sign up anyway. Those points add up, and eventually you'll be able to take a trip on miles and points. Make sure you keep up with those. Highly recommended that you make sure, if you're going to travel at all, just a little bit, make sure you sign up for those reward programs, people. Mistake that I've made in the past that I don't make anymore: don't always book round trips if you're looking for the best deals. It's okay to go multiple airlines. It's okay you should be flexible anyway. Flexible will always get you the best rates. So what I'm saying by don't always book round trips is, so you're looking online and you're like, well, the cheapest round trip right now is on United for this price and that price to this airport. You don't always have to do that. You might find the best deal is to fly in on United on this day and, fly out on American or Spirit on this day. It's good to look at all of your options when you're booking flights. I go to Google Flights and I mix and match. Just be careful with the mixing and matching, because the one bad part about the mixing and matching is, okay, so if you have two different flights on one leg booked with two airlines, and the first one's delayed, well, the second one's a different airline, they're not going to rebook you for free or anything like that. They're going to charge you a fee and say, oh, well, you need to book it all over again, because that's not our fault that your United flight was booked. We're American Airlines. We have no control over that. So, you know, that it's being careful with that. So if you're going to do, like, say you're going to book a trip, a flight to Vegas, and then book a different airline to Seattle on the same leg, for example, make sure you have a long enough layover that if the first flight's delayed or something happens, you're still fine, because if not, you might be screwed. Travel mistake that I've made in the past is not booking direct. I'm a big fan of booking direct because you're dealing with the customer service and dealing with all of them. It's always better to book direct, because if you're going to book a flight and you're going to go through a third party, there's nothing wrong with Bookings.com and hotels and Travelocity. I've done them many times. I still do them if the situation's right. Usually now if I do it, it's a boutique hotel that I'm not going to get points out of or anything. But the thing is, though, it's always better to book direct airports and hotels, because an American Airlines flight booked on American Airlines, you got first dibs and priority over booking American Airlines flight on Bookings.com. Bookings.com, you're going to deal with them, and you got to go through a third party, which is a lot tougher. Cheapo Air, I made that mistake with Cheapo Air, and I'll never make it again, because I got screwed. I booked the wrong day, and it wouldn't change it. I had to book the whole flight over again. I ended up just having to pay for an entirely different flight, when if I would have went directly through the airline, I could have called them up, said, hey, you know, I booked the wrong day, my fault. They probably would have charged me a $99 change fee, and that would have been it. But Cheapo Air wasn't going to do that. So always book direct, so you'll have a lot more flexibility. This mistake I've made is not checking all transportation options. Okay, so it's easy to get to the airport. Depends if you're in a hurry, you're like, oh, let's just take Uber, let's just take the taxi and hurry up and get to the hotel. But oftentimes there's much cheaper options out there. There's more efficient options out there. Sometimes we have a hard time figuring out what options is what, because we're just like, just catch the cab, just catch Uber, let's just hurry up and get there, and that's fine. Sometimes you can get a personal driver and it'll actually come out cheaper than getting an Uber or a taxi, depending on the group size and all that kind of stuff. So it's just good to know all your options. You get to the airport, you know your options on catching a bus, catching a tram, catching, you know the L, or, you know, the subway, depending on the airport, whatever it is, you know, catching Uber, catching Lyft, catching the cab. Just know all of your options when you get there. There may be a bus that takes you there, it takes you to the city center, and then you can walk. It's just very important to know all your options from the airport, because I know I've overpaid and I know I've been insufficient at times. Mistake I've made before is only rent cars when needed. The first 2 times I went to Boston, it was kind of like, yeah, I needed to rent a car if I was going to ride around, and I stayed in New Hampshire and Rhode Island and places like that. But if you're going to go around and see the city of Boston, knowing how much parking is, knowing how bad traffic is, it's best to take the public transportation, because the T in Boston is extremely efficient. You can say the same thing for Chicago. The Chicago L is very efficient. You get around the city very well. Same thing with New York with the subway. You don't need to rent a car unless needed. You're in New Orleans, I wouldn't rent a car in New Orleans, because parking is awful in New Orleans. Parking is very expensive, and you can get around. It's not a huge city, you know, with the streetcar, Uber, Lyft, by foot. So just rent a car when needed. You know, same thing with Las Vegas. You know, you're on the Strip in Vegas. If you're going to be on the Strip the whole time, you don't really need to rent a car, because you can get around so many other ways. However, if you're going to go outside of a city, I recommend, yeah, you have to rent a car if you're going to go outside the city and see the things around. But yeah, don't rent a car unless you need to rent a car, and rent it for those specific days that you need to rent it for. Mistake. When you're booking travel, be aware of hidden fees. Las Vegas is notorious for hidden fees because of the resort fees and things like that. And some other places have resort fees too. So just be aware of those hidden fees that they put on. You know, you see one price. Sometimes it's on flights. Sometimes when you fly international, there's the big fees and every taxes, surcharges, all of this kind of stuff. Just be aware of this before you're booking your travel and everything, so that they don't get you on the hidden fees. But yeah, definitely be aware of those hidden fees before you book. Be aware of the hidden fees when you get there. They will change your vacation. You will spend a lot more money than you were expecting to spend. Next, I would say make sure that you study the areas that you're staying in. And when I say study the areas that you're staying in, I'm saying, like, before you stay there, be aware if you're going to be in a hotel, Airbnb, you know, your surroundings. You might have grocery stores near. You might want to book somewhere based off of having a grocery store near where you can go walk to, or, you know, restaurants, certain restaurants near, things like that. Be aware of your area that you're staying in is sketchy or not. If you know there's a lot of activity, you might not want to stay around this area because there are illegal things going on. Just make sure in general that you're very aware of the area that you're staying in before you stay there, because I have booked hotels before in areas that aren't the best. I've booked in areas where there's not a lot to do, not a lot to go to, didn't have a rental car, couldn't walk around and do much. Just make sure that you know the areas that you're staying in is, one, safe, and it's efficient, you know, as far as, you know, places to go to, grocery stores, restaurants, if you're gonna eat, you know, all those kind of things. Just make sure you're aware in general of the area that you're gonna be staying in your hotel. Travel mistake I made is eating out every meal. Now, your bill goes up really fast and you spend a lot of money really quickly when you eat out every meal. So you have to be efficient. Think about things like, hey, you're out of the country somewhere, and some places have the lunch special, happy hour special. You're going to drink one day, go during happy hour lunch specials. You might want to eat a big meal during a lunch special. Don't always go out. If you're staying in a hostel or a hotel with a kitchen, an Airbnb, vacation rental home, go to the grocery store. It's always going to be cheaper to go to the grocery store and buy grocery than it will be just to go eat out every day. Not saying you shouldn't eat out. You shouldn't go try the local foods and everything, because you should wherever you are. But at the same time, be very aware of how pricey it can be to eat out every day, and you should be efficient and go out and save yourself a little money by not eating out every single meal. Another mistake that I've made before, and I'm guilty of this, is that not getting to the airport early enough. I've been bailed out a couple times by actually showing up late and the plane actually being delayed. And I actually made my flight a couple times because it was delayed. But that's not the way you want to live. You definitely want to make sure you get there early. So if you're thinking, you know, smaller airport, hour or so to get to the airport early, get there an hour and a half early. Bigger airport, thinking 2 hours, get there 2.5 early. International flight, thinking 3 hours, get there 3.5. So whatever you're thinking you need to be there, add an extra 30 minutes onto it, you know, maybe even an hour. If you got a lounge pass, get there early, go to the lounge, enjoy yourself, you know, just get there early, and there's no way you can miss your flight at that point. Don't get out there and take a chance, because you can get stuck in traffic on your way to the airport. All kind of things that could happen that can absolutely screw you. So make sure you're very efficient, get there extra early, add an extra 30 minutes. The next thing on my list is, I would say, don't overpack. And I'm going to do 2 parts to this. I'm going to say don't overpack, and also pack for where you're going. First of all, when I say don't overpack, I learned this the hard way, because I used to pack pretty heavy. I'd always carry a check bag. But then when I started to realize the bag fees and everything for bringing checked bags, and I started also realizing how long you got to wait at times at the carousel for your bag, it's so much better and so much more efficient to go with a carry-on bag and just a book sack, or just a book sack if you can pull that off. It's so much more efficient. It's a lot less issues to deal with. It's a lot less to lug around. It's all around a better deal if you can go as light as possible. And also, like I said, though, to the weather. So if you're going somewhere, like, say I'm going to Iceland or somewhere like that, I know it's going to be cold. I know I'm going to need to wear a heavy jacket. It may not be cold where I'm living at. It's going to be best, because I have limited space the way I'm doing things. I should wear that heavy jacket to the airport. That way, you know, I can take it off on a plane and hold it or whatever. If I'm going somewhere warm and I'm leaving somewhere cold, and, you know, that's a little bit different, but I guess you'll just have to suck it up and dress light there, because you don't want to just take a bunch of extra stuff and take up space. So you want to be a little bit careful with that, but always dress for the place that you are going to, and always pack as light as you possibly can. This mistake I've made is not trying the local food. Like, I'm used to going to McDonald's or, you know, the local places here, the fast food joints. I'm like looking for places that are familiar. That is a mistake when you travel, because when you travel, it is good to try the food and the place that you're going to. Try different things that you don't have at home. I'm pretty good about it sometimes, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna try that. But it's very good to branch out and and try whatever the local foods, the local beers, whatever the locals are accustomed to doing. It's very good that you get involved with their customs and try some different things. I'm going to say explore the tourist spots and also go off the beaten path and check out some different places. Don't restrict yourself. I know some people make a list. You go to New York City, there's so many things to do in New York. You make this long list, you'll never get through it all, but then you don't end up doing the things that are in front of you that aren't on that list. So don't restrict yourself. Go out there and do other things. Just kind of go with the flow, but do have a list. Do have things that you want to do. So do some of the things that are gold, that are tourist things that you need to see, but also don't restrict yourself from seeing other things. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit the like, share, subscribe button. Leave any comments below. I love to interact and help us to continue to grow as a travel community.